Prison Pentonville is a Category B seamen's prison, operated by Her Majesty's Prison Service. Pentonville Prison is not actually within Pentonville itself, but is located further north, on the Caledonian Road in the Barnsbury area of the London Borough of Islington, North London, England. History: the first modern prison in London, Millbank, opened in 1816. It had separate cells for 860 prisoners and proved satisfactory to the authorities, who started building prisons to deal with the rapid increase in numbers occasioned by the ending of capital punishment for many crimes and a steady reduction in transportation. 2 Acts of Parliament allowed for the building of Pentonville Prison, designed by Captain Joshua Jebb, Royal Engineers, for the detention of convicts sentenced to imprisonment or awaiting transportation. Construction started on the 10th of April 1840 and was completed in 1842. The cost was £84,186 2d. It had a central hall with 5 radiating wings, all visible to staff at the center. This design, intended to keep prisoners isolated, the separate system first used at Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, was not, as is often thought, a panopticon. Guards had no view into individual cells from the central position. Pentonville was designed to hold 520 prisoners under the separate system, each having his own cell, 13 feet long, 7 feet wide and 9 feet high, with little windows on the outside walls and opening onto narrow landings in the galleries. They were admirably ventilated, a visitor road, and had a water closet, though these were replaced by communal, evil-smelling recesses because they were constantly blocked and the pipes were used for communication. The cost of keeping a prisoner at Pentonville was about 15 shillings a week in the 1840s. Prisoners were forbidden to speak to each other, and when out on exercise would tramp in silent rows, wearing brown cloth masks. In chapel, which they had to attend every day, they sat in cubicles, the heads visible to the warder but hidden from each other. Mental disturbances were common. An official report admitted that, for every 60,000 persons imprisoned in Pentonville, there were 220 cases of insanity, 210 cases of delusion, and 40 suicides. However, conditions were better and healthier than at Newgate and similar older prisons, and each prisoner was made to do work such as picking oakum and weaving. The work lasted from 6 in the morning until 7 at night. The food ration was a breakfast of 10 ounces of bread and 3/4 of a pint of cocoa. Dinner was half a pint of soup, 5 ounces of bread, and 1 pound of potatoes. Supper, a pint of gruel and 5 ounces of bread. Pentonville became the model for British prisons. A further 54 were built to similar designs over 6 years, and hundreds throughout the British Empire. For instance, Pentonville was used as a model for the eventual construction of Caledonian Prison in Rattle Gdid, Malta by W. Lamb Arrowsmith in 1842. Execution site. Prisoners under sentence of death were not housed at Pentonville Prison until the closure of Newgate in 1902, when Pentonville took over executions in North London. Condemned cells were added and an execution room built to house Newgate's gallows. At the same time, Pentonville took over from Newgate the function of being the training location for future executioners. Irish revolutionary Roger Casement was hanged there on the 3rd of August 1916, and his remains interred at the site until 1965. Udham Singh, the Indian revolutionary, who shot Sir Michael O'Dwyer, was also held in custody and hanged at Pentonville. Various other people were executed at Pentonville, and all were subsequently buried at the rear of the prison in unmarked graves. These include Hawley Crippen, whose family in Coldwater, Michigan, has been lobbying since 2009 for his body to be repatriated and buried in the family plot after claiming claims arising from mitochondrial DNA analysis that he did not murder his wife. The prison cemetery is at 51.545569 degrees north, 0.11511722 degrees west, 51.545569 minus 0.11511722. The final execution at Pentonville took place on the 6th of July 1961 when Edwin Bush, aged 21, was hanged. Escaped prisoners. 2006. Prisoner escaped during transit between Pentonville Prison and a hospital facility. 2009. Convicted arsonist Julian Chittard escaped by clinging on to the underside of the prison van which had delivered him to the jail from Snaresbridge Crown Court. He returned to the prison 4 days later after giving himself up to police. 2012. Convicted murderer John Massey escaped from within the prison confines at Pentonville on Wednesday, the 27th of June 2012, 1830 BST, and was recaptured in Kent 2 days later following what police described as an intelligence-led operation. Recent history. In May 2003, an inspection report from Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons blamed overcrowding for poor standards at HMP Pentonville. The inspection found that basic requirements for inmates such as telephones, showers and clean clothes were not being provided regularly enough. The report also noted a lack of access to education for inmates and inadequate specialized procedures for vulnerable prisoners. The inspection report also praised a number of areas of the prison including the healthcare department, the prison drugs strategy and programs for reducing offending behavior. A new hospital wing, built at a cost of £15 million, was opened at Pentonville Prison in early 2005. Months later, inspectors reported that despite the new facilities, primary care for prisoners such as clinical supervision of nurses and drug dispensing practices were inadequate. A year later, 14 prison officers at Pentonville were suspended after allegations of trafficking and inappropriate relations with inmates. In August 2007, a report from the Pentonville's Independent Monitoring Board stated that the prison was infested with rats and cockroaches and had insufficient levels of staff. The report also criticized the detention conditions for mentally ill inmates, the reception facilities for new prisoners and the library provision at the jail. In October 2009, gross misconduct charges were brought against managers of Pentonville Prison after an investigation found that inmates had been temporarily transferred to HMP Wandsworth before inspections. The transfers, which included vulnerable prisoners, were in order to manipulate prison population figures. In February 2014, a report by Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons Nick Hardwick said there are huge challenges at Pentonville and that it will not have a viable future without a major refurbishment and extra staff. A further report released in June 2015 indicated that Pentonville had deteriorated even further since the previous inspection. The report highlighted that many inmates were left without basic provisions, including pillows and utensils, that there were mounds of rubbish on the floors and cockroach infestations. Francis Cook, chief executive for the Howard League for Penal Reform, commented, "When a prison is asked to hold 350 more prisoners than it is designed for, we should not be surprised when it fails." The prison today, Pentonville, is a local prison, holding Category B, C adult males remanded by local magistrates and Crown Court, and those serving short sentences are beginning longer sentences. The prison is divided into these main wings: A wing, Induction and First Night Center; J wing, Resettlement wing; C wing, Remand and Convicted Prisoners; D wing, Enhanced Prisoners. E-Wing, Detoxification Unit Overflow. F-Wing, Detoxification Unit. G-Wing, Education, Workshops and Offending Behavior Courses. Notable former inmates. 1879, Charles Peace, notorious burglar and murderer. 1895, Oscar Wilde spent time in Pentonville before being transferred to Wandsworth. 1910, Hawley Harvey Crippen was hanged in the prison in 1910 after being found guilty of murdering his wife. 1912, Frederick Seddon the poisoner was hanged in the prison in 1912. 1916, Sir Roger Casement, Irish Republican, was executed in the prison in 1916 on charges of treason. 1917, Eamon de Valera, Irish Republican leader. 1940, Udham Singh, was an Indian independence activist and hanged at Pentonville Prison on the 31st of July 1940. 1940, Arthur Koestler was detained for 6 weeks after arriving in England without papers in 1940. His novel Darkness at Noon was published in England while he was still in Pentonville. 1946, Neville Heath was hanged in the prison in 1946 after having been convicted of murdering 2 women. 1950, Timothy Evans, wrongfully accused co-tenant of John Christie. 1953, John Christie was hanged in the prison in 1953 after having been convicted of murdering his wife. 1974, Simon D., a radio, television personality, served 28 days for non-payment of rates on his former Chelsea home that he had not shared with his first wife since 1971 halves. C. 1980, Hugh Cornwell of the Stranglers served a sentence for drug possession. 1984, Taki Theodorakopoulos, gossip columnist for The Spectator, was imprisoned in Pentonville for 3 months in 1984 on a cocaine possession charge. He wrote a book about the experience titled Nothing to Declare. 1984, George Best, football player, spent 7 days imprisoned in Pentonville for driving under alcohol and assault. 1994, David Irving, writer, spent 10 days of a 3-month sentence for contempt of court. 1999, John Alford spent 6 weeks in Pentonville in 1999 after selling illegal drugs to a reporter. 2005, Pete Doherty of the Libertines and Baby Shambles spent 4 nights in Pentonville in February 2005 while unable to make bail on charges which were later dropped. He subsequently wrote a song about the prison, named Pentonville, which is on the Baby Shambles album Down in Albion. He spent a further 6 weeks in Pentonville between May and June 2011 for cocaine possession. 2009, Boy George, for the assault and false imprisonment of a male escort. 2010, George Michael, for drug driving offenses.